Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bella, and in today's video we are going to wrap up everything that we read in June and talk a little bit about the books I'm looking forward to reading in July. Now just a reminder, I am primarily a mood reader, so any of the books I kind of talk about being for July are going to be more like books I think I might be in the mood to read, or maybe ones that I maybe have just recently started, as today is July 3rd. So yeah, just a reminder as we move forward, I kind of stopped doing like a set TBR because it just doesn't really work with the way that I read, and I do want to make sure the books that we're talking about together are books that I actually end up reading. So I've kind of changed up the way I do it, and this has been much more successful. So first things first, let's go back in time to June and talk about all the books I read and finished in June. The first book that I read and finished in June is Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. And I'm just like looking at my notes here so I can like remember all the details of everything. But anyway, yeah, Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. I will also put a picture up on the screen. And this book is about, it takes place in the early 90s in the Irish village of Crossmore. And it focuses on our main character, Lucy, as she navigates life, being a teenager, kind of going from teenage to adulthood, and basically falling in love with her best friend Susanna, which she obviously in a relatively conservative small town during this time period was somewhat frowned upon, so they end up kind of keeping their relationship secret, and then you kind of get to see how that devolves. We also are watching her navigate her relationships with her family, kind of the relationship dynamic of that time, where she is kind of looking at her mom, who's a homemaker, and looking at her dad, who works on the farm, and seeing like her brothers grow up and end up, you know, taking over the farm and working with her dad, and then kind of realizing that her like hand-me-down career would be motherhood, and she's just like not sure if that's something she wants to pursue. We also get to watch her navigate her relationship with her really close guy friend Martin, because everybody around her of course is like, oh, you and Martin would be so cute together, you guys would be amazing, and she just doesn't feel that way about him, obviously. And so we kind of get to watch her navigate being his friend and people wanting it to be more, and then kind of how she navigates recognizing the power she holds over him because he likes her so much, and comparing that to essentially the way she feels with Susanna and the power Susanna holds over her, and you kind of get to watch all these relationship dynamics unfold. This is a literary fiction book, and I overall really enjoyed this. I believe I gave this, let's see. What did I rate this? Will it show me? I know it's a 4 something, but I just want to know for a fact. Yes, okay, I gave this a 4.5. This definitely resonated with me a lot, in the sense of I loved so much of the like coming of age, her struggling with family dynamics, relationship dynamics, just the way those things work together. I loved the writing style. I just think there were definitely moments I was picking the book up because I was like, I need to read, and not as much because I was like super wanting to find out what happened. I also think the characters are quite unlikable sometimes, and that always just kind of leaves me feeling a little uncertain. I also just think I'm trying to be much pickier with my 5 stars this year. I actually was kind of like, I really struggle with the rating system, because I actually was looking back at Divine Rivals, which was the last book I rated 5 stars, and I was like, does this measure up to like my Throne of Glasses, if that makes sense? And I really try not to like go back and update ratings unless I reread a book, because I want to be true to the way that I felt when I finished it, but at the same time, yeah, I think I'm just kind of trying to like figure out my ratings, how I feel about books, etc. So anyway, very, very good book, but this was a 4.5 star. I do think that the love story was very authentic, and I think the writing style was so beautiful, and I would highly recommend this. Even if you're not a big literary fiction person, I think that if you are a woman and you get really nostalgic about kind of like your teenage years, I think this is a book that you would really enjoy. Okay, so the next book I finished in June was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This was kind of a like pseudo in-person, my local book club book, because this is the book that we all chose to pick up while we were on our beach trip, if you watched my last vlog. And I think this book was fantastic. This was a recommendation from my friend Madison, and it was a phenomenal recommendation. This book follows Justin and Emma, who both believe that they're cursed because every time they date somebody and they break up, the person they were dating goes on to find their soulmate, and then the next person they're with, they like marry, have kids, all of the things. So they essentially meet through a Reddit post. Bear with me, it has potential to be cringy, but it isn't. It didn't read cringy to me, and I'm not like a Reddit person. So I think they did it in a really tasteful way. But basically they meet through a Reddit post, they start chatting, and they're like, hey, we both have this curse. What if we date and then break up, and then theoretically the next person we date will be our soulmate, like we'll cancel each other out. So they kind of make this whole plan, all these rules. They like ask each other like, okay, well, what do you normally do on dates? So they have all these like qualifications they have to meet. But this all is kind of happening in the midst of Justin taking on some really serious responsibility. He has just become the guardian of his 3 younger siblings. And Emma kind of always, but has a new struggle happening with her mom, who is somewhat manic and has a lot of mental illness that she struggles with. And so she kind of never knows where she is until she pops back into her life. And this happens kind of right as her mom is popping back into her life. So there's a lot of family drama that they're trying to navigate individually, and then trying to navigate this like relationship together. And it's kind of a fun spin almost on fake dating, because they aren't like officially dating necessarily, but they are taking it very seriously and really trying to give it a fair shake, so that way the curse actually breaks. But yeah, the found family in this is amazing. I think the friendships that are written in this are really great. I think that the main characters are very funny. I think that's why some of the things that like could potentially feel a little cringy don't, because it's really done in a clever, funny way. And yeah, I overall really enjoyed this book. I gave this book, drum roll, a 4.5 as well. And I think that's very fitting. Again, I think there were elements of this that made me feel like it was not quite a 5. Again, I'm also trying to be a lot pickier with my 5-star reads lately, but I think overall it was a fantastic book. It was a fantastic romance book. I think a great summer read, and it definitely had some of those like heavier elements that you would think of when you think of like an Emily Henry, where the characters are experiencing real life. But I personally, when I'm reading a romance, do really enjoy that, because sometimes if the romance is written in a way that is almost too unrealistic, where there's no real life scenarios happening, I tend to not really be able to get into it. I think as somebody who has dealt with my own personal like family drama and stuff like that, it feels really refreshing to read a book where the characters can meet and fall in love and have a happily ever after, but the scenario and the like circumstances surrounding them are very realistic. So anyway, fantastic book. I definitely want to look into more Abby Jimenez books, because I really enjoyed it and I really enjoyed her writing style. And finally, I actually have the physical book for this one. The final book I finished in June was Tom Lake by Ann Patchett, and this is a little bit, I mentioned in the reading vlog where I read this, a little bit of a cheat, because technically I finished the last 50 pages of this on July 1st, but I'm just rounding that back into June. We'll just pretend this year July 1st was actually June 31st, and we'll all turn a blind eye, okay? Because I was not gonna wait until the end of this month to talk about this book when I only read the last 50 pages on the first day of July. So anyway, but this book was my Bella's Book Babes Fable book club book for the month, and I loved this book. I think this book was so fantastic. A book has not touched me and made me feel so comforted and so emotional in such a long time. I think I will have one or the other, but to feel just almost like wrapped in like a hug or like a warm sweater is what this book felt like. It had drama in a way that didn't feel too serious, because this basically, let me explain and then that'll make more sense. So this basically follows Laura and her 3 daughters who returned to their family's cherry orchard in North Michigan during the spring of 2020, so during the COVID pandemic. And while they are picking cherries, because they don't have any of the workers that they normally have, obviously due to the pandemic, they begged their mom to tell them the story of Peter Duke, who is a famous actor that she acted with and then also had a romance with at Tom Lake, which is the name of the like place where the theater was at. And yeah, we basically just go back and forth between modern day, her talking with her daughters kind of talking about their lives. We get to see a little bit into the, things that they're doing. We get to know a little bit about, so we have Emily, Maisie, and Nell. And so we get to see a little bit about like what their careers are. So like Emily is going to take over the family farm. Maisie is a veterinarian in training, and Nell wants to be an actor or an actress like her mom used to be. And we just kind of get to see how each perspective on the story is different. And it really just feels like you're sitting with your mom or grandmother and listening to them tell you a story of their like childhood or early adulthood or something like that. And I think it was just so beautifully written. And like I said, I listened mostly to the audiobook for this, and the audiobook was narrated by Meryl Streep, who I think should just be, narrating every single audiobook I listen to, because she was fantastic. And I would just lay like in my bed at night listening to it, falling asleep like my grandmother was telling me a bedtime story, and it was so peaceful. And the point I was making earlier about saying that the drama didn't feel too dramatic is because it's been like 30 years since all of these events happened. Our main character, Laura, who's telling the story to her daughters, is obviously grown up, married, has these daughters, so like she has a good life and everything's okay. So anytime something tumultuous in the past happens, while it does make you feel emotional, it's almost like it's protected by the bubble of knowing that everything's okay now. And what's really interesting about this is you kind of get her dual perspective, where she's kind of like reminiscing on the past. So she'll be like, oh, this thing happened and it was really, it was a big struggle at the time. But then she will kind of be like, I wouldn't change anything now because of like how her life is now, which is really amazing. And yeah, I highly, 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 highly recommend this book. I gave this a 4.5 star. The thing for this that kept it from being a 5-star for me is the way Peter Duke, the actor that the mom used to date, is interwoven to me into the lives of them in the future. Does not make a lot of sense to me. I don't want to give too many details because I don't want to give any spoilers, but essentially the ending where we learn what happens to Peter Duke, where he ends up, and then literally like the very, very, very ending, I think doesn't make a lot of sense. I would not have reacted in the way that our main character reacted. But I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean anything's wrong with what she did. Some of you may read this and be like, oh, I would have done the same thing. Great. I thought it was a little weird. So that kind of took me out of the story just a smidge and kept me from bumping it all the way to a 5, but I still highly, highly recommend this and definitely think you should pick this up. This kind of almost feels like a genre bend between romance and literary fiction to me. I think it definitely is more lit fic than anything else, in the sense of if you don't get connected to our characters, then you're probably gonna think this is quite boring, but if you really get connected to the characters, it will be a smash. So anyway, highly recommend. Okay, that carries us to the end of our books we read in June. I did do a reread of Silver Elite, but I actually didn't fully finish rereading it. I got to like maybe 75% through and all my friends had already finished reading it. So I was like, just remind me what happens at the end. Let's talk about it. Cause that was our, we did kind of like 2 books in June as like a local book club book. Silver Elite was the first one, and then Just for the Summer was the second one. So yeah, I am not fully counting that. I'm just gonna stick with my original rating. I think it was a 4.5. I think that's fine. Honestly, through a reread, I'm not gonna actually reread it since I didn't fully reread it, but I think on a second go around, I probably would bump it to like a 4, because I do think it's good, but I do think it's definitely got a bit of like a cliche energy to it. I don't know if that's me changing my mind, considering I have now like read it once and then recognized some of the things that people were saying about it being, taking a lot of inspiration, I should say, from other like dystopian novels, and then rereading it, it's almost like even more reminding you of other things because you already know it. So I'm gonna stick with my original rating, because I think what really bumped it up to like a 4.5 for me when I first read it was the fact that it had a really gnarly plot twist at the end, and that was like really cool for me. So anyway, I'm gonna keep that as it is, not really gonna include that. I did not even mark it as reread in Fable. I think I just noted the days that I read it. But yeah, just so you know, that was the only other thing that I picked up and kind of read in June. So moving on to books I'm looking forward to reading or considering reading in July. So the first one is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This was actually not on my radar at all, and yesterday I was kind of just lounging on my couch and I was kind of thinking about reading something, but I didn't really want to buy anything because I just wasn't sure if I was like fully in the mood to read, and I also hadn't like fully settled on a next book. So I was like, let me get up, let me explore my TBR shelf, which is like right here. Yes, there she is. And I will just see if there's anything on there I'm interested in. And I saw this and I was like, let me just give it a try. Let me just read like the first couple chapters, kind of see if this is like the vibe, if this is what I'm feeling. I do really want to read this in the summertime. So I was like, do I really want to wait a whole nother year or maybe try to read it in August? Just kind of like all the thought processes you have. And then I know that it's also coming to Netflix as a Netflix show. So I kind of want to read the book before I watch the show. And so I picked it up and read the first few chapters, and now I'm already about 40 pages in. I read a little bit yesterday afternoon, and then I read a little bit in bed last night. And so far I am really, really loving this. So this definitely is going to be on the TBR for July, because so far so good. I think the writing in this is very interesting. It's a bit, I don't even know the right word. I'm definitely having some moments where I'm like kind of struggling at times because of the way it's written, and not like in a bad way, but almost in a like, it's written in a very like smart way. Like the sentence structure and some of the words that are used at times feel a smidge clunky to me, and I think that's a me issue, not a writing issue. So not much we can do about that, but overall the story so far is really, really good. I think this is going to probably emotionally devastate me, so I'm not particularly looking forward to that, but I am looking forward to finally crossing this off my list, because it's a book that I have been thinking about probably since, like, I don't know, when did this come out? Like, honestly, for like 2 years it feels like. Yeah, 2022. Yeah, so I've probably been thinking about this for about 2 years when it like really kind of blew up, and I'm glad I'm finally diving in. I did tell my friend Rachel literally yesterday that I was not going, or not yesterday, Wednesday, that I was not going to be adding a lit fic to my July TBR, because I had read 2 in June, and I wanted something a little bit more lighthearted, but here we are. You know, I usually read about 3 books, and the other 2 that I have kind of on my radar for July are not lit fic, so I think we can make it through. I also love the idea that, let me tell you what this is about if you don't know. So it says, after Tova Sullivan's husband died, she began working at the night shift at the Sowell Bay Aquarium, mopping floors and tidying up. Keeping busy has always helped her cope, which she's been doing since her 18-year-old son mysteriously vanished on a boat in Puget Sound over 30 years ago. Tova becomes acquainted with curmudgeonly Marcellus, a brilliant giant Pacific octopus living at the aquarium. Marcellus will dream of lifting one of his 8 arms for his human captors until he forms a friendship with Tova. Ever the detective, Marcellus deduces what happened the night of Tova's son's disappearance, and now Marcellus must use every trick in his old invertebrate body can muster to unearth the truth for her before it's too late. Oh, and this is a debut novel. That's crazy. Wow. interesting. That's very impressive. But yeah, I love that kind of when we go through this, we're getting the chapters of Marcellus where he kind of talks about being in captivity. So it'll start out like this, like day 1301 of my captivity, and then it kind of goes in, and then we'll go back and forth between him and Tova, which also very interesting name. I really like the name Tova. But then we also have just been introduced to a new character who is not mentioned on the back, so I really don't understand how he's going to come into play, but his name's Cameron. So yeah, so far I'm quite interested. I got this copy on Indie Bookstore Day at my local bookstore, and it's got these really funky sprayed edges. So yeah, anyway, this is on the TBR. So far so good, and I will definitely keep you guys posted on what I'm thinking about it. So the next book that is on my radar, the next two I actually have not started yet. One that I know for a fact is going to be on my list. Let's see, let me pull her up. Is Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen. This is my local book club pick for July. This is Brooke's birthday pick. And this is a dark fantasy romance, I believe. And I also believe it is a reverse harem, which is really fun. So it says, 4 beastly princes, 1 awkward bookworm, an enchanted world of fae, magic, and danger. I've always loved fairy tales. I never imagined I'd actually be in one. When my father wanders into the enchanted realm of the fae, I know I have to go after him. And when he gets imprisoned, I'll do anything to save him, even trade my freedom for his. I had no idea I'd end up imprisoned by 4 sexy fae who turn into beasts at night. I have to win my freedom, and that means making a bargain with them. They must find their mates in order to break the curse. If I can help them do that, they'll set me free. Sounds simple, right? It's not, because against my better judgment, I'm starting to fall for these beastly princes. One is smart and sweet, the other mysterious and deadly, other flirty and confident, and the last prince, he's handsome, strong, and has a wicked temper. And he's dead set against breaking the curse. Why does he want to keep me here forever? But it's not just my freedom on the line. If I don't break the prince's curse soon, all of the magic in the enchanted veil will be stolen by the evil and stupidly hot Prince of Thorns. And I'm not letting my princes stay cursed. Not after I've fallen in love with them. So this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling as well. Trevor's like looking at me from the couch. I know it's a little much, but it's Brooke's birthday pick. It's gonna be really good, okay? Anyway, am excited to read this. I think Rachel and Madison have already started it and said so far so good. So I'm excited to start it. I think this is gonna be super fun, very easy, very simple. And I have not read just like a super fun, silly book like this in a hot minute. So I think paired with the emotional devastation I'm gonna get from Remarkably Bright Creatures, this will kind of help, you know, emotionally heal me after that. So I also just think I love the duality of being able to read a like more serious book while reading just like the craziest, smuttiest little romance book that you can get your hands on. I think is just girlhood, you know, that's what it's all about. So I've also heard really great things about this series by one of the booktubers that I love to watch, Laura Home. So I will link her channel below as well. But yeah, she read the whole series and loves it. So I'm, you know, maybe this is a new series that I can get, you know, start diving into. Who knows? But anyway, I am very excited about this. I think I'm going to start this probably this weekend because we have our first book club meeting about it next Thursday. So very excited. Okay, and the next book that is on my radar is one that I have been wanting to read for a very, very hot minute. I'm pulling this up now. I kind of went back and forth. I considered Bitten by Jordan Stephanie Gray. Decided to hold off on that. That feels a little bit maybe more of a fall book, something like that. I thought about First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. That's the one that's on my physical TBR right here that I bought that has a pink cover for our book bingo. But that one also feels a little bit more fall to me. So yeah, I was kind of considering a couple, and then I scrolled really far down on my want to read on Fable and remembered I want to read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. posted, not sure. And this is one I've been trying to get the book club to read for a hot minute, but it just like has not worked out. We've been reading other things or other stuff has been going on. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and read it myself, and go ahead and add this to our July TBR. And this book sounds really, really interesting. So it says, sometimes the worst day of your life happens and you have to figure out how to live after it. So Clementine forms a plan to keep her heart safe. Work hard, find someone decent to love, and try to remember to chase the moon. The last one is silly and obviously metaphorical, but her aunt always told her that you need at least one big dream to keep going. And for the last year, that plan has gone off without a hitch. Mostly the love part is hard because she doesn't want to get too close to anyone. She isn't sure her heart can take it. And then she finds a strange man standing in the kitchen of her late aunt's apartment, a man with kind eyes and a southern drawl and a taste for lemon pies. The kind of man that before it all she would have fallen head over heels for, and she might again. Except he exists in the past, 7 years ago to be exact, and she, quite literally, lives 7 years in the future. Her aunt always said the apartment was a pinch in time, a place where moments blended together like watercolors, and Clementine knows that if she lets her heart fall, she'll be doomed. After all, love is never a matter of time, but a matter of timing. So I think this sounds really interesting. I think it's going to be a really good kind of like summer romance feel. First of all, I love the name Clementine. I think that's so cute. And I also just love the kind of genre bend of the like time travel. I don't exactly know how they're going to incorporate that into the story, but like obviously her and this guy existing in like two different places in time. And then it also being a romance, I think sounds really intriguing. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into this. This gets really good reviews. It has like 4 stars, I believe, on Fable. I'm on the like website version and I'm pretty sure it's like right there. You can see it just says 4 stars. I feel like it maybe is, oh, geez. I feel like maybe it's like, that's the average rating, not like the specific rating, but yeah, I have heard really, really good things. Haley Pham, who I really enjoy, I read her book Just Friends earlier this year in May, and she, I know, has read this and rated it very highly. So it's been on my list for a really long time, and I am excited to hopefully get it checked off and added to the July TBR. So I think that kind of wraps up everything I'm looking forward to. Per usual, like I said, I tend to be a bit of a mood reader, so there definitely is a chance that I could change my mind. These could get DNF'd. I could pick up another one. And that's why I love to do kind of the wrap up and the TBR. So that way next month you guys will be able to see what I actually ended up reading in the month of July. But I think I stayed pretty true to what I said I was going to read in June. I think Sunburn was on my list. Just for the Summer was on my list. And I think Tom Lake was on my list. So I think we kind of checked every single box for the month of June, which is fantastic because I normally am not that great at following my TBR, even when it is kind of like a mood TBR, because I kind of just like ebb and flow through what I'm feeling like reading at the time. So yeah, I so appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another video. If you enjoyed it, please consider like, commenting, and subscribing. And yeah, I hope to see you back here next week with a new video.